The will they, won't they fight between Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. is now officially dead in the water. We are not going to get to see this fight anytime next year, and it pretty much looks like we're not going to see it at all. But why has it broken down? Besides the obvious, I am joined by my friend Brian, the true Geordie. Brian, good to have you on the channel, mate.
Great to be here. I've been trying to twist his arm to get him to crack on with his boxing channel, so you can thank me a little bit in the comments. Cheers.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it. I really enjoy it, even like the editing of all the boxing content. That is really good. Yeah. And as you know, like I'm sort of built a little bit of a name on YouTube for doing my Chelsea stuff, but boxing's my first love. Boxing's the thing I love to talk about. But this is a situation that maybe we don't love to talk about as much because the fight's now broken down. There was a fight within itself to get this one on because obviously the British Boxing Board of Control were at loggerheads with Eddie
Even before that, the weight difference was a fight. The drug problem was a fight. Now the rematch was a fight. Like, this is the kind of ordeal that just ruins the love of boxing. Like, just make it or don't make it. Like, and I'm kind of glad we've got a final answer now. But obviously, the final problem was the money.
Did you think that the fight morally should have gone ahead? Because I'll just put it on record now. I didn't really care. I wanted to see the fight, but that's just a fan in me. I don't like to get caught up in the technicalities, but morally there is concern because when you look at the amount of eyeballs that will be on the fight, and you're trying to maybe send a message to young people and whatever, you are sort of being rewarded for what would be seen as bad behaviour in the past.
Well, none of us know for sure whether or not Conor Benn was deliberately cheating. Yep. What we do know is that scientifically proven stuff was found in his system which would allude to cheating. He's had conversations with people. Simon Jones now all of a sudden changed his tune a little bit on him. Whatever, like, the protocols haven't been followed and the lad hasn't been able to clear his name. And I'm a fan of him. I'm not trying to be a dick about it. I want to see him fight regularly, whether it's Eubank or not. But that did leave a bad taste in everyone's mouth of, like, for a start, Eubank was coming in weight drained. And we've seen when he eventually did take another fight after that, what that did to him. It wouldn't have been a good version of Eubank. And I mean, correct us if you think I'm wrong, mate. It stands to reason that fight would not have gone well for him against Conor Benn. Like, I think Conor Benn is a more of a power puncher than Smith.
Yeah.
So probably would have been a bad way to have that fight in terms of his 156 or something he was.
I think he was 155. He even still weighed it on the day of the fight just to sort of make a point.
But that drained him for the follow-up fight.
Yeah.
So that showed, like, the state of it, because, you know, when you're draining your body weight so low, and it minimizes basically the water you're carrying in your head to receive those powerful shots to the head. It wouldn't have been a good version of him.
Chris Eubank Jr. is one man that we've always associated with having a granite chin. Like, I see Chris Eubank Jr. cracked clean by George Groves and not have that much effect. And you can speak to people that have sparred with Golovkin. Who was it? There was a fighter, I should have the name on the top of my head now, but at sparred with Golovkin, they said George Groves hits harder. And George Groves, maybe not with one punch, but George Groves was hitting Eubank Jr. with good shots. We've seen Eubank Jr. have his chin checked in the past, and it was only that one fight where all of a sudden you thought, has the punch resistance just gone?
Everything had changed, though. So we'd gone from a combination puncher with a granite chin, with a great engine, to someone who's trying to box on the outside, like Roy Jones, and having a weak chin who, was dismantled the minute Smith even touched him, really. So, yeah, look, this now seems to have come to a point of Eubank wants too much money.
Yeah.
I think that maybe he's not wanting the fight genuinely, because I can't understand why Eubank, in a situation where he's on the tail end of his career, he's never cared about belts. It's always been about the money with Eubank, always. And you're going to get, without doubt, your career highest payday, which is what every fighter's trying to do at the end, cash in, and you walk away from the table. I don't understand that.
Yeah, cash in a fight that realistically, despite what me and you might think, if you are Eubank Jr., you've got to be looking at it thinking, well, I'm a favourite here.
I'm the bigger guy.
I'm the bigger guy. I'm the more experienced guy. So it is a weird one. And ultimately, the sort of conclusion we're drawing from the words of Eddie Hearn is that is what's happened. Eubank Jr. has cashed himself out in this fight.
Do you believe that?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely do believe that Eubank Jr. has cashed himself out, but there's a conversation there to be had, which I'm sure we will, about whether he's right to be demanding more money. So what I'm sort of alluding to is an interview Eddie Hearn did with IFL, and Eddie Hearn said that everyone's saying, well, the fight's twice as big now, but that doesn't mean that it's going to draw twice the amount of money. It won't sell twice the amount of pay-per-views, and we're not going to be able to do twice on the gate. Here's the first thing with that. You could do twice on the gate. You could definitely do twice on the gate, because we remember the first time round, where was it set for? The O2. I was in the queue, mate. I was in the queue online
we're
trying to
talking
get...
about the Spurs stadium, right? So
exactly.
You're talking literally treble the seats.
So you can do that. It would do more pay-per-views this time round, but I don't know whether it would do twice.
I don't think it would be twice.
It wouldn't do twice, no. But when you look at it, right, so Eddie Hearn, again, and I'm sort of trying to go approximately here because I don't know, but Eddie Hearn said the money that was offered to Eubank Jr. for the rescheduled bout was more than what was originally offered. There was no catch weight at this time. He could weigh in at 160, which would suit him. And he said that the money that was offered was 3 times what Eubank Jr.'s ever earned from his highest purse. Now, it shocked me to read this. Against George Groves in the World Boxing Super Series, Eubank Jr. only took home about he took home about 900 grand. We read that for the Liam Smith rematch, he took home just over 2 million. So let's say, ballpark wise, that Eubank Jr.'s offered 6 mil, 7 mil for this fight.
That would be insanely good.
That is.
For a fighter who's achieved as little as Eubank has. And I don't mean this disrespectfully. I rate him. He's just never gone beyond the point of contender, really. So that shows his personality, his father, the family name, everything else has gotten him to a point of you're finally able to make all of this money in one go. There's no way he makes a fraction of that fighting other people.
No, he doesn't make anywhere near that.
No way.
To also, add relevance to it, though, there's no way that Conor Benn makes a fraction of that fight anyone else.
That's why Conor Benn's ready to sign.
Yeah, he could take the riskiest fight in the division. Conor Benn could go and fight Terence Crawford. He still don't make that much, I don't think. But what I would say is this. When you look at it and you think about pay-per-view records, and there's always an asterisk near pay-per-view now because everyone knows the rise of streaming services and things like that. But when you look at pay-per-view records, right, Joshua against Klitschko, I think, did 1.1 million pay-per-view buys, right? That was a massive event. Joshua earned just under $20 million for that fight. So if you then say, okay, right, so Chris Eubank Jr., let's say he's getting offered 6-7 million, is he not within his right to look at that ballpark, to bank on the fact that, do you know what? I think it could do near that mark. I don't know whether I'm deluded here out of wanting to see the fight, but I think with the controversy that goes with it as well, I think it does near the million pay-per-view mark by.
I'm not sure.
No.
I think it's... I say this purely because the KSI Logan Paul event that they did, which was mega, was about 1.3 apparently. AJ was a mega star at the point of... Conor Benn and Eubank together create something, but is that on its own enough to compare with Klitschko, AJ at the point where AJ
Do the Americans care about Conor Benn and Eubank?
Yeah, I would look if they did Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury, I think is a bigger fight, and that did about 850k. So let's say even if they do 700, 600, that's still fantastic.
I'll tell you an audience that Jake Paul against Tommy Fury doesn't open up or doesn't delve into, though, is the guys around my dad's age and your dad's age and stuff like that. They really don't care about YouTube boxing and a lot of those sort of fights. But I tell you what, because of the name and because of the family history and the fact that the nostalgia that back in the day they watched the dad's fight, I think you could open up to that audience. But we stick a pin in it because I could be wrong on it. But I do think that regardless of what happened in the build-up, right? Because the main thing that Chris Eubank Jr. would probably be levelling at Conor Benn here is, and this is not my opinion, this is what Chris Eubank Jr. will think. He'll think, right, I gave you the opportunity first time, and yeah, his bread would have been buttered nicely as well, but I gave you the opportunity first time, you failed a drugs test. Whether you were right or wrong to do so, and whether you can prove your innocence at some point, that's irrelevant for the time being. You failed the drugs test after having me weight drained, right? So then he's thinking, okay, I'll do it, but now I need paying. And I sort of get that people can go, yeah, but, let's just get the fight on. We saw controversy between David Haye and Derek Chisora. They had to get a Luxembourg license and they got that fight on, and at the end of the day shook hands after. But there's a key point here that I don't think people are realising as much here. And that is Like it or not, in my opinion, Chris Eubank Jr. is so much more proven than Conor Benn. So he should be the A side. Like when you look at, okay, notoriously, the Eubanks have been hard to work with. Maybe he hasn't got the powerhouse promoter behind him that Conor Benn has. But if we're just going on about what they've done in boxing, Conor Benn, for my money, has never fought a domestic rival.
In terms of, are you meaning he's more marketable, therefore he deserves more money? He's the bigger name because he's had more big fights?
I think he's achieved more in boxing than Conor Benn has.
Yeah, but also because of the age as well. Like, he's obviously older. And one argument that the Benn side might make is, yeah, you have had bigger fights. You've also lost them. We haven't lost a big fight.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We're coming in on smoke here. We're coming in on a hell of a track record. So you've shown more vulnerability than we have. Now, for me, I agree with you. I think there's a slightly bigger name, Eubank, but I don't think a strong enough claim is there for Eubank to demand that much more than Benn, because ultimately, what are they standing on? Their father's shoulders, really.
Yep.
And their father's played a 50-50 part in it, and that's why they're both able to make this fight. So I think Eddie's probably gone as far as he can contractually.
I do think, though, when Conor Benn was around the age of when Chris Eubank Jr. was around Conor Benn's age now, he got in there and fought Billy Joe Saunders. Off the back of that, after that, he went on a domestic run where he fought Nick Blackwell, Tom Doran, and you might not rate these names, but he did fight the guys around him: James DeGale, George Groves, Liam Williams, Liam Smith, and that's taken out of the question the European opponents like Chudinov and obviously like Arthur Abraham. So I think that if you go on Conor Benn's record now and you go, okay, well, what's the best win on there? What's the best win?
Chris Algieri or something?
Chris Algieri, okay. Well, AJ against Ruiz won, and Chris Algieri fought Tommy Coyle on that card. He got stopped by Luke Campbell. It's horses for courses, but I'm just trying to put a little bit of context. And Eubank Jr. no doubt will be thinking about that. He will be thinking, you've not fought any of the domestic rivals, any of the guys that he had to go through to get himself up there. Now, when you remember when Chris Eubank Jr. famously lost his pen when he was supposed to be fighting Golovkin, that came off the back of him fighting on Eddie Hearn cards and going through the domestic scene. And Conor Benn just ultimately hasn't done that. And maybe you could say, okay, his career's been managed very well to this point. But then it asks the question, if you're looking at the ambition of going on to become a world champion, does Benn not need to fight a few of those guys? And they don't even have to be English, but at that sort of level, at the European...
They're trying to skip that, aren't they?
They're trying to skip that, but why?
Eddie's trying to jump it straight into... I mean, there's now talk of Devin Haney and them, right? So, like, Tank Davis, he's tweeting Tank Davis, like, I don't think Conor Benn has any aspirations to go through these lower level guys. They're wanting big fights now. And the fact that Eddie Hearn is even willing to put him in there with a guy who's significantly bigger than them tells me, like, this isn't a move that Eddie would have made with Anthony Joshua years ago. And he fast-tracked Anthony Joshua, but this is light-speed fast-tracking, right?
Yeah.
It's straight to the big fights, that's cash in. And I just thought he would be trying to grow Conor a bit more in his skill set. And I think that that's testament to the fact that Eddie's feeling the pressure to deliver big fights as well for the platform.
So let's assume that it's not Chris Eubank Jr. yet, next, which we know it won't be. Chris Eubank Jr. is going to be going his own route. We're hearing that he could have I think it's an IBF world title fight against Janabek, a good fighter for not a lot of money, and I agree with you, it probably is a big mistake. Conor Benn next. Who would you like to see him in with? Because I know I've got a few ideas, but...
I mean, I've seen the Devin Haney back and forth. Haney's dad, who is obviously his conciliary, tells him everything to do. He was like, we respect the Benn name. We would love that fight for what it means to him as a fan of boxing. So again, the Benn name opening more doors for him. And the thing that's interesting with me is when you watch Haney control people, he's obviously just gone up to 140. Ben's 147. Benn hits hard for a 147 though. So like, it's one because I know Haney, when he rehydrates, he rehydrates up to 20 pounds heavier or whatever. He's a massive guy for that weight. But it'll be interesting to see how that jab and control deals with a Conor Benn who can hurt you.
Yep.
You know, and that would be an exciting fucking fight for me. Like, it's one I would be really interested to watch.
Domestically, I just don't know if I can take him skipping that level. Like, I really do
You're
feel...
so traditional, aren't you?
I really do feel like he needs to fight a few of the domestic guys. And I understand that Conor Benn's probably looking at the call-outs from Harlem Eubank and thinking, nah, I'm not lowering myself to that. Although Harlem's a very good fighter, you know.
Exactly, but that's exactly why, isn't it?
That's
like,
it.
Like the risk reward, at least with Eubank's Junior, he's expected to be the underdog because of all the points that you've made. So it's a win-win for him, and that's probably why Eubank's like, "Fuck me, I'm going to charge for this."
The fight for me, and this is listen, I love this man. I love his style. Been lucky enough to watch him in the gym. But the fight for me, if we're talking about someone domestically, a big name, it would be a massive fight. And although I say domestically, this guy I'm about to talk about is not domestic level. He fought on Saturday night. He's from nearly your neck of the woods, a little bit further up. PBK, Josh Kelly. Conor Benn against Josh Kelly is a huge fight. It's that fight is a fight that could sell out the O2 Arena like that, in my opinion. Obviously, they've spoke about it before, and it's funny, isn't it, how the ascendancy changes, because if we remember, it was Conor Benn calling out Josh Kelly originally.
I remember
when Josh Kelly was fighting on big matchroom cards, obviously on the undercard of AJ against Ruiz out in Madison Square Gardens.
He's another one who got fast-tracked by Eddie and paid the price for it, though.
Yeah.
You know, put him in there with was it a Mexican geezer?
David Avanesian.
Hard-hitting geezer, right, yeah. So I remember watching that fight thinking, this was too quick, far too quick.
But he's come back with some big wins.
No, he absolutely has, and I'm happy for him. Obviously, he's a Northeast lad. I think that'll be a really interesting one to find out where the skill level is, because Josh doesn't hit that hard compared to Conor, but the skills are there. He's a clever fighter, right? He's slick. So that would cause, it would make Conor bring out the best of him. So yeah, I'm down for that, for sure. That's a good domestic fight.
So ultimately, just to cap it off, we know what Chris Eubank Jr. probably does next. Would you be happy? So let's say you were a friend, you were a family member, you were someone that wanted the best for Conor Benn. Would you be happy with the jump that we're hearing about, which is going from fringe world level guys who were never any higher than fringe world level, were on the way back down, in the likes of obviously Samuel Vargas, you know, and a sort of guys that Conor Benn has been fighting? Would you be happy with him going straight from that to a Tank Davis, to a Devin Haney, to a Boots Ennis, or to a Terence Crawford? Or do you think, much like I do myself, that he needs those sort of middle ground fights first?
If I was his dad, I'd be saying take the fights that you're suggesting. Grow, learn, don't rush it. There's no rush. What were you trying to rush for? And I also think that the Haney stuff might be chat, because the Haney camp, the Tank camp, they say a lot of things, right? And like, he's a big puncher, 147. So, I think that your road is the right road. But I just think this kid wants to make money. Like, remember, he spent 18 months to 2 years out of earning big money and big fights. That and his name's bigger than what it was then, because of being the king of controversy now, and being on Piers Morgan and having these meltdowns where, don't get me wrong, as a PR move, it was a disaster. But as I've found out, sometimes you can actually, you know, be bigger from making those kind of mistakes. And I think that he needs to come back with a vengeance. And I think it's going to be money fights for me.
Yeah, win, lose or draw. And no matter how you feel about him, everyone is going to be watching Conor Benn in these big fights. So I think it is a win-win for him in a way, but he'd have to weather the storm in the meantime. People, thank you very much for making it to the end of another video, I should say. I am going to be uploading every couple of days from this channel now, so please make sure, if you're not already, subscribe to this channel, like the video to help me get it out there to as many people as I possibly can, and I will see you all in the next one.